Hello, we're back. We're ready to read chapter 16 of Deathworld by Harry Harrison. And if we have enough time, we'll get to 17, but I don't know. We might not have enough time. I'm on a bit of a schedule today. But anyway, we'll get started in like a minute or two, and yeah, hang tight. Alright, I think we're in good shape. Let's get started. Chapter 16. It made no sense. Jason tried to reconcile the modern machine with the barbarian, and couldn't. Who was he calling? The existence of one communicator meant there was at least another. Was Res a person or a thing? With a mental effort, he grabbed a hold of his thoughts and braked them to a stop. There was something new here, factors he hadn't counted on. He kept reassuring himself that there was an explanation for everything once you had your facts straight. Jason closed his eyes, shutting out the glaring rays of the sun where it cut through the treetops, and reconsidered his facts. They separated evenly into two classes, those he had observed for himself, and those he had learned from the city. This last class of facts he would hold to see if they fitted with what he learned. There was a good chance that most, or all of them, would prove false. "Get up!" The voice jarred into his thoughts. "We're leaving." His legs were still numb and hardly usable. The bearded man snorted in disgust and hauled him to his feet, propping him against the outer wall. Jason clutched the knobby bark of the logs when he was left alone. He looked around, soaking up impressions. It was the first time he had been on a farm since he had run away from home. A different world with a different ecology, but the similarity was apparent enough to him. A new sown field stretched down the hill in front of the shack, plowed by a good farmer. Even, well-cast furrows that followed the contour of the slope. Another, larger log building was next to this one, probably a barn. There was a snuffling sound behind him, and Jason turned quickly and froze. His hand called for the missing gun, and his finger tightened down on a trigger that wasn't there. It had come out of the jungle and padded up quietly behind him. It had 6 thick legs with clawed feet that dug into the ground. The 2-meter-long body was covered with matted yellow and black fur, all except the skull and shoulders. These were covered with overlapping horny plates. Jason could see all this because the beast was that close. He waited to die. The mouth opened, a frog-like division of the hairless skull, revealing double rows of jagged teeth. "Here, Fido," the bearded man said, coming up behind Jason and snapping his fingers at the same time. The thing bounded forward, brushing past the dazed Jason, and rubbed his head against the man's leg. "Nice doggy," the man said, his fingers scratching under the edge of the carapace where it joined the flesh. The bearded man had brought 2 of the riding animals out of the barn, saddled and bridled. Jason barely noticed the details of smooth skin and long legs as he swung up on one. His feet were quickly lashed to the stirrups. When they started, the skull-headed beast followed them. "Nice doggy," Jason said, and for no reason started to laugh. The bearded man turned and scowled at him until he was quiet. By the time they entered the jungle, it was dark. It was impossible to see under the thick foliage, and they used no lights. The animals seemed to know the way. There were scraping noises and shrill calls from the jungle around them, but it didn't bother Jason too much. Perhaps the automatic manner in which the other man undertook the journey reassured him, or the presence of the dog, quote-unquote, that he felt rather than saw. The trip was a long one, but not too uncomfortable. The regular motion of the animal and his fatigue overcame Jason, and he dozed into a fitful sleep, waking with a start each time he slumped forward. In the end, he slept sitting up in the saddle. Hours passed this way, until he opened his eyes and saw a square of light before them. The trip was over. His legs were stiff and galled with saddle sores. After his feet were untied, getting down was an effort, and he almost fell. A door opened, and Jason went in. It took his eyes some moments to get used to the light, until he could make out the form of a man on the bed before him. "Come over here and sit down." The voice was full and strong, accustomed to command. The body was that of an invalid. A blanket covered him to the waist. Above that, the flesh was sickly white, spotted with red nodules, and hung loosely over the bones. There seemed to be nothing left of the man except skin and skeleton. "Not very nice," the man on the bed said, "but I've grown used to it." His tone changed abruptly. "Noxa said you were from off-world. Is that true?" Jason nodded yes, and his answer stirred the living skeleton to life. The head lifted from the pillow, and the red-rimmed eyes sought his with a desperate intensity. "My name is Rez, and I'm a grubber. Will you help me?" Jason wondered at the intensity of Rez's question, all out of proportion to the simple content of its meaning, yet he could see no reason to give anything other than the first and obvious answer that sprang to his lips. "Of course I'll help you, in whatever way I can, as long as it involves no injury to anyone else. What do you want?" The sick man's head had fallen back limply, exhausted, as Jason talked, but the fire still burned in the eyes. "Feel assured, I want to injure no others," Rez said. "Quite the opposite. As you see, I am suffering from a disease that our remedies will not stop. Within a few more days, I will be dead. Now I have seen the city people using a device. They press it over a wound or an animal bite. Do you have one of these machines?" That sounds like a description of the medkit. Jason touched the button at his waist that dropped the medkit into his hand. "I have mine here. It analyzes and treats most—" "Would you use it on me?" Rez broke in, his voice suddenly urgent. "I'm sorry," Jason said. "I should have realized." He stepped forward and pressed the machine over one of the inflamed areas on Rez's chest. The operation light came on, and the thin shaft of the analyzer probe slid down. When it withdrew, the device hummed and clicked 3 times as 3 separate hypodermic needles lanced into the skin. Then the light went out. "Is that all?" Rez asked, as he watched Jason stow the medkit back in his belt. Jason nodded, then looked up and noticed the wet marks of tears on the sick man's face. Rez became aware at the same time and brushed at them angrily. "When a man is sick," he growled, "the body and all its senses become traitor. I don't think I've cried since I was a child. But you must realize it's not myself I'm crying for. It's the untold thousands of my people who have died for lack of that little device you treat so casually. Surely you have medicines, doctors of your own?" "Herb doctors and witch doctors," Rez said, consigning them all to oblivion with a chop of his hand. "The few hard-working and honest men are hampered by the fact that the faith healers can usually cure better than their strongest potions." The talking had tired Rez. He stopped suddenly and closed his eyes. On his chest, the inflamed areas were already losing their angry color as the injections took effect. Jason glanced around the room, looking for clues to the mystery of these people. I'm going to take a short break here on this page break. I could use some water. Hang on. Okay. Floor and walls were made of wood lengths fitted together, free of paint or decoration. They looked simple and crude, fit only for the savages he had expected to meet. Or were they crude? Actually, the wood had a sweeping, flame-like grain. When he bent close, he saw that wax had been rubbed over the wood to bring out this pattern. Was this the act of savages, or of artistic men, seeking to make the most of simple materials? The final effect was far superior to the drab paint and riveted steel rooms of the city-dwelling Pyrrans. Wasn't it true that both ends of the artistic scale were dominated by simplicity? The untutored aborigine made a simple expression of a clear idea and created beauty. At the other extreme, the sophisticated critic rejected over-elaboration and decoration and sought the truthful clarity of uncluttered art. At which end of the scale was he looking now? These men were savages. He had been told that. They dressed in furs and spoke a slurred and broken language. At least Noxa did. Rez admitted he preferred faith healers to doctors. But if all this were true, where did the communicator fit into the picture? Or the glowing ceiling that illuminated the room with a soft light? Rez opened his eyes and stared at Jason, as if seeing him for the first time. "Who are you?" he asked. "And what are you doing here?" There was a cold menace in his words, and Jason understood why. The city Pyrrans hated the grubbers, and without a doubt, the feeling was mutual. Noxa's axe had proved that. Noxa had entered silently while they talked, and stood with his fingers touching the haft of this same axe. Jason knew his life was still in jeopardy until he gave an answer that satisfied these men. He couldn't tell the truth. If they once suspected he was spying among them to aid the city people, it would be the end. Nevertheless, he had to be free to talk about the survival problem. The answer hit him as soon as he had stated the problem. All this had only taken an instant to consider as he turned back to face the invalid, and he answered at once. Trying to keep his voice normal and unconcerned, he said, "I'm Jason dinAlt, an ecologist. So you see I have the best reasons in the universe for visiting this planet." "What is an ecologist?" Rez broke in. There was nothing in his voice to indicate whether he meant the question seriously or as a trap. All traces of the ease of their earlier conversation were gone. His voice had the deadliness of a stingwing's poison. Jason chose his words carefully. Simply stated, it is that branch of biology that considers the relations between organisms and their environment, how climatic and other factors affect the life forms, how the life forms in turn affect each other and the environment. That much Jason knew was true, but really, he knew very little more about the subject, so he moved on quickly. "I heard reports of this planet and finally came here to study it firsthand. I did what work I could in the shelter of the city, but it wasn't enough. The people there think I'm crazy, but they finally agreed to let me make a trip out here." "What arrangements have been made for your return?" Noxa snapped. "None," Jason told him. "They seemed quite sure that I would be killed instantly and had no hope of me coming back. In fact, they refused to let me go, and I had to break away." This answer seemed to satisfy Rez, and his face cracked into a mirthless smile. "They would think that, those junkmen. Can't move a meter outside their own walls without an armor-plated machine as big as a barn. What did they tell you about us?" Again, Jason knew a lot depended on his answer. This time, he thought carefully before speaking. "Well, perhaps I'll get that axe in the back of my neck for saying this. But I have to be honest. You must know what they think. They told me you were filthy and ignorant savages who smelled. And you had curious customs you practiced with the animals. In exchange for food, they traded you beads and knives. Both Pyrrans broke into a convulsion of laughter at this. Res stopped soon from weakness, but Noxa laughed himself into a coughing fit and had to splash water over his head from a gourd jug. That I believe well enough, Res said. It sounds like the stupidity they would talk. Those people know nothing of the world they live in. I hope the rest of what you said is true, but even if it is not, you are welcome here. You are from off-world, that I know. No junk man would have lifted a finger to save my life. You are the first off-worlder my people have ever known, and for that you are doubly welcome. We will help you in any way we can. My arm is your arm. These last words had a ritual sound to them, and when Jason repeated them, Noxa nodded at the correctness of this. At the same time, Jason felt that they were more than empty ritual. Interdependence meant survival on Pyrrus, and he knew that these people stood together to the death against the mortal dangers around them. He hoped the ritual would include him in that protective sphere. That is enough for tonight, Rez said. The spotted sickness has weakened me, and your medicine has turned me to jelly. You will stay here, Jason. There is a blanket, but no bed, at least for now. Enthusiasm had carried Jason this far, making him forget the 2G exertions of the long day. Now fatigue hit him a physical blow. He had dim memories of refusing food and rolling in the blanket on the floor. After that, oblivion. Alright, let's start chapter 17. I think we can read it, but we're going to take a short break. It's hot. Alright, back at it. This is a longer chapter, and it is very hot. So we'll see how far I get. Chapter 17. Every square inch of his body ached where double gravity had pressed his flesh into the unyielding wood of the floor. His eyes were gummy, and his mouth was filled with an indescribable taste that came off in chunks. Sitting up was an effort that he had to stifle, was such an effort that he had to stifle a groan as his joints cracked. Good day, Jason, Ress called from the bed. If I didn't believe in medicine so strongly, I would be tempted to say there is a miracle in your machine that has cured me overnight. There was no doubt that he was on the mend. The inflamed patches had vanished, and the burning light was gone from his eyes. He sat propped up on the bed, watching the morning sun melt the night's hailstorm into the fields. There's meat in the cabinet there, he said, and either water or visk to drink. The visk proved to be a distilled beverage of extraordinary potency that instantly cleared the fog from Jason's brain, though it did leave a slight ringing in his ears. And the meat was a tenderly smoked joint, the best food he had tasted since leaving Dalkan. Taken together, they restored his faith in life and the future. He lowered his glass with a relaxed sigh and looked around. With the pressures of immediate survival and exhaustion removed, his thoughts returned automatically to his problem. What were these people really like, and how had they managed to survive in the deadly wilderness? In the city, he had been told they were savages, yet there was a carefully tended and repaired communicator on the wall. and by the door a crossbow that fired machined metal bolts. He could see the tool marks still visible on their shanks. The one thing he needed was more information. He could start by getting rid of some of his misinformation. Rez, you laughed when I told you what the city people said about trading you trinkets for food. What do they really trade you? Anything within certain limits, Rez said. Small manufactured items such as electronic components for our communicators, rustless alloys we can't make in our forges, cutting tools, atomic electric converters that produce power from any radioactive element. Things like that. Within reason, they'll trade anything we ask that isn't on the forbidden list. They need the food, badly. And the items on the forbidden list? Weapons, of course, or anything that might be made into a powerful weapon. They know we make gunpowder, so we can't get anything like large castings or seamless tubing we could make into heavy gun barrels. We drill our own rifle barrels by hand, though the crossbow is quiet and faster in the jungle. Then they don't like us to know very much, so the only reading matter that gets to us are tech maintenance manuals, empty of basic theory. The last banned category you know about, medicine. This is the one thing I cannot understand. It makes me burn with hatred with every death they might have prevented. I know their reasons, Jason said. And tell me, because I can think of none. Survival. It's just that simple. I doubt if you realize it, but they have a decreasing population. It's just a matter of years before they will be gone. Whereas your people, at least, must have a stable, if not slightly growing population to have existed without their mechanical protections. So in the city, they hate you and are jealous of you at the same time. If they gave you medicine and you prospered, you would be winning the battle they have lost. I imagine they tolerate you as a necessary evil to supply them with food. Otherwise, they wish you were all dead. It makes sense, Rez growled, slamming his fist against the bed. That kind of twisted logic you'd expect from junkmen. They use us to feed them, give us the absolute minimum in return, and at the same time, cut us off from the knowledge that will get us out of this hand-to-mouth existence. Worse, far worse, they cut us off from the stars and the rest of mankind. The hatred on his face was so strong that Jason unconsciously drew back. Do you think we are savages here, Jason? We act and look like animals because we have to fight for existence on an animal level. Yet we know about the stars. In that chest over there, sealed in metal, are over 30 books, all we have. Fiction, most of them, with some history and general science thrown in. Enough to keep alive the stories of the settlements here and the rest of the universe outside. We see the ships land in the city. We know that up there are worlds we can only dream about and never see. Do you wonder that we hate these beasts that call themselves men and would destroy them in an instant if we could? They are right to keep weapons from us. For sure as the sun rises in the morning, we would kill them to a man if we were able and take over the things they have withheld from us. It was a harsh condemnation, but essentially a truthful one. At least from the point of view of the outsiders. Jason didn't try to explain to the angry man that the city Pyrrans looked on their attitude as being the only possible and logical one. How did this battle between your two groups ever come about? He asked. I don't know, Rez said. I've thought about it many times, but there are no records of that period. We do know that we are all descended from colonists who arrived at the same time. Somewhere at some time, the two groups separated. Perhaps it was a war. I've read about them in the books. I have a partial theory, though I can't prove it, that it was the location of the city. Location? I don't understand. Well, you know the Junkmen, and you've seen where their city is. They managed to put it right in the middle of the most savage spot on this planet. You think they don't care about any living thing except themselves. Shoot and kill is their only logic. so they wouldn't consider where to build their city and managed to build it in the stupidest spot imaginable. I'm sure my ancestors saw how foolish this was and tried to tell them so. Well, that would be reason enough for a war, wouldn't it? It might have been, if that's what really happened, Jason said. But I think you have the problem turned backwards. It's a war between native Pyrrhan life and humans, each fighting to destroy the other. The life forms change continually, seeking that final destruction of the invader. Your theory is even wilder than mine, Rez said. That's not true at all. I admit, life isn't too easy on this planet, if what I have read in the books about other planets is true. But it doesn't change. You have to be fast on your feet, and you keep your eyes open for anything bigger than you. But you can survive. Anyway, it doesn't really matter why. The junk men look for trouble, and I'm happy to see that they have enough. Jason didn't try to press the point. The effort of forcing Rez to change his basic attitudes wasn't worth it, even if it was possible. He hadn't succeeded in convincing anyone in the city of the lethal mutations, even when they could observe all the facts. Rez could still supply information, though. Well, I suppose it's not important who started the battle, Jason said, for the other man's benefit, not meaning a word of it. But you'll have to agree that the city people are permanently at war with all the local life. You people, though, have managed to befriend at least 2 species that I have seen. Do you have any idea how this was done? Noxa will be here in a minute, Rez said, pointing to the door as soon as he's taken care of the animals. Ask him. He's the best talker we have. Talker? Jason asked. I had the opposite idea about him. He didn't talk much, and what he did say was, well, a little hard to understand at times. Not that kind of talking, Rez broke in impatiently. The talkers look after the animals. They train the dogs and the dorms, and the better ones, like Noxa, are always trying to work with other beasts. They dress crudely, but they have to. I've heard them say that the animals don't like chemicals, metal, or tanned leather, so they wear untanned furs, for the most part. But don't let the dirt fool you. It has nothing to do with intelligence. Dorms? Are those your carrying beasts, the kind we rode in coming here? Rez nodded. Dorms are more than pack animals. They're really a bit of everything. The large males pull the plows and other machines, while the younger animals are used for meat. If you want to know more, ask Noxa. You'll find him in the barn. I'd like to do that, Jason said, standing up. Only I feel undressed without my gun. Take it, by all means. It's in that chest by the door. Only watch out what you shoot around here. Noxa was in the rear of the barn, filing down one of the spade-like toenails of a Dorum. It was a strange scene, the fur-dressed man with the great beast, and the contrast of a beryllium copper file and electroluminescent plates lighting the work. The Dorum opened its nostrils and pulled away when Jason entered. Noxa patted its neck and talked softly until it quieted and stood still, shivering slightly. Something stirred in Jason's mind, with the feeling of a long unused muscle being stressed, a hauntingly familiar sensation. Good morning, Jason said. Noxa grunted something and went back to his filing. Watching him for a few minutes, Jason tried to analyze this new feeling. It itched and slipped aside when he reached for it, escaping him. Whatever it was, it had started when Noxa had talked to the Dorum. Could you call one of the dogs in here, Noxa? I'd like to see one closer up. Without raising his head from his work, Noxa gave a low whistle. Jason was sure it couldn't have been heard outside of the barn, yet within a minute one of the Pyrrhan dogs slipped quietly in. The talker rubbed the beast's head, mumbling to it, while the animal looked intently into his eyes. The dog became restless when Noxa turned back to work on the Dorum. It prowled around the barn, sniffing, then moved quickly towards the open door. Jason called it back. At least he meant to call it. At the last moment, he said nothing, or nothing aloud. On sudden impulse, he kept his mouth closed, only he called the dog with his mind, thinking the words, "Come here," directing the impulse at the animal with all the force and direction he had ever used to manipulate dice. As he did it, he realized it had been a long time since he had even considered using his psi powers. The dog stopped and turned back towards him. It hesitated, looking at Noxa, then walked over to Jason. Seen this closely, the beast was a nightmare hound. The hairless protective plates, tiny red-rimmed eyes, and countless saliva-dripping teeth did little to inspire confidence. Yet Jason felt no fear. There was a rapport between man and animal that was understood. Without conscious thought, he reached out and scratched the dog along the back, where he knew it itched.
"Didn't know you're a talker,"
Noxa said. As he watched them, there was friendship in his voice for the first time.
"I didn't know either, until just now," Jason said.
He looked into the eyes of the animal before him, scratched the ridged and ugly back, and began to understand. The talkers might have well-developed psi facilities. That was obvious now. There is no barrier of race or alien form when two creatures share each other's emotions. Empathy first, so there would be no hatred or fear. After that, direct communication. The talkers might have been the ones who first broke through the barrier of hatred on Pyrrus and learned to live with the native life. Others could have followed their example. This might explain how the community of grubbers had been formed. Now that he was concentrating on it, Jason was aware of the soft flow of thoughts around him. The consciousness of the dorm was matched by other like patterns from the rear of the barn. He knew without going outside that more of the big beasts were in the field back there.
"This is all new to me," Jason said. "Have you ever thought about it, Noxa? What does it feel like to be a talker? I mean, do you know why it is you can get the animals to obey you, while other people have no luck at all?"
Thinking of this sort troubled Noxa. He ran his fingers through his thick hair and scowled as he answered.
"Never thought about it. Just do it. Just get to know the beast real good, then you can guess what they're gonna do. That's all."
It was obvious that Noxa had never thought about the origin of his ability to control the animals, and if he hadn't, probably no one else had. They had no reason to. They simply accepted the powers of talkers as one of the facts of life. Ideas slipped towards each other in his mind like the pieces of a puzzle joining together. He had told Kirk that the native life of Pyrrus had joined in battle against mankind. He didn't know why. Well, he still didn't know why, but he was getting an idea of the how. "About how far are we from the city?" Jason asked. "Do you have an idea how long it would take us to get there by Durham?"
"Half a day there, half back. Why, you want to go?"
"I don't want to go into the city, not yet, but I would like to get close to it," Jason told him.
"See what Rez say,"
was Nox's answer. Rez granted instant permission without asking any questions. They saddled up and left at once in order to complete the round trip before dark. They had been traveling less than an hour before Jason knew that they were going in the direction of the city. With each minute, the feeling grew stronger. Noxa was aware of it too, stirring in the saddle with unvoiced feelings. They had to keep touching and reassuring their mounts, which were growing skittish and restless.
"This is far enough," Jason said.
Noxa gratefully pulled to a stop. The wordless thought beat through Jason's mind, filling it. He could feel it on all sides, only much stronger ahead of them in the direction of the unseen city. Noxa and the Durhams reacted in the same way, restlessly uncomfortable, not knowing the cause. One thing was obvious now. The Pyrran animals were sensitive to psi radiation, probably the plants and lower life forms as well. Perhaps they communicated by it, since they obeyed the men who had a strong control of it. And in this area was a wash of psi radiation such as he had never experienced before. Though his personal talents specialized in psychokinesis, the mental control of inanimate matter, he was still sensitive to most mental phenomena. Watching a sports event, he had many times felt the unanimous accord of many minds expressing the same thought. What he felt now was like that. Only terribly different. A crowd exulted at some success on the field or groaned at a failure. The feeling fluxed and changed as the game progressed. Here the wash of thought was unending, strong, and frightening. It didn't translate into words very well. It was part hatred, part fear, and all destruction. Kill the enemy was as close as Jason could express it. But it was more than that. An unending river of mental outrage and death. "Let's go back now," he said, suddenly battered and sickened by the feelings he had let wash through him. As they started the return trip, he began to understand many things. His sudden unspeakable fear when the Pyrrhan animal had attacked him that first day on the planet, and his recurrent nightmares that had never completely ceased, even with drugs. Both of these were his reaction to the hatred directed at the city. Though for some reason he hadn't felt it directly up to now, enough had reached through to him to get a strong, emotional reaction. Ress was asleep when they got back, and Jason couldn't talk to him until morning. In spite of his fatigue from the trip, he stayed awake late into the night, going over in his mind the discoveries of the day. Could he tell Ress what he had found out? Not very well. If he did that, he would have to explain the importance of his discovery and what he meant to use it for. Nothing that aided the city dwellers would appeal to Ress in the slightest. Best to say nothing until the entire affair was over. Alright, I think we'll stop there for now. It's a good place. Hopefully, we'll get some reading done this coming week. It's supposed to be very hot, so we'll see. Worst case scenario, I guess I could do it with the AC on, which the background is so noisy with the AC. It's rough. But I don't know. We could give it a try. As always, thanks to Aindulmedir for letting us use his tunes. We listened to the Lunar Lexicon today, and you can find him on Spotify, Bandcamp, or YouTube, so go check him out. And leave me a comment if you feel like it, or shoot me an email. It's at my same username at gmail.com. Man, my throat is shut. I don't know what happened. All right, folks, take it easy. Have a good one.